What is going on, Dodger fans? Thank you for listening to another episode of the Incline Dodgers podcast. We're presented by FanSided. Make sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. It'll really help us out because we are now in the offseason. As you know, your Los Angeles Dodgers have unfortunately been eliminated by the Atlanta Braves in 6 games. But if it makes you feel better, on this day, on October 27th, exactly 1 year ago, your Los Angeles Dodgers did win the World Series trophy. But that is the past. We got to focus on the present and move forward to the offseason. But we have a few things to cover today, including why the Dodgers lost. We have some fan questions we'll get to about kind of looking forward into the offseason. And we'll talk about Andrew Friedman's press conference, which he addressed earlier today, Wednesday afternoon. I'm going to shift gears now and introduce David Rosenthal. I know this loss probably hurt you a little bit. What are your thoughts on what went wrong for the Dodgers, or what do you want to open up with on today's show?
Yeah, it definitely hurts, but compared to the years prior 2020, prior to where they won the World Series, this is nothing. You go back, 2019 was utter heartbreak. 2018, heartbreak. 2017, possibly the biggest heartbreak. And it goes back and back and back. And this year is just not quite that for me. It sucks, but frankly, the Dodgers got outplayed in that championship series. They just got outplayed. They didn't hit, they didn't pitch, and the Braves were the better team. So I'm doing all right. I'm gonna be okay, but I can't be quite as mad as I normally am because they won last year and they just simply got outplayed.
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to talk about, but before we get to that, Jake Reiner, what's going on today?
Hey, Kevin. Hey, David. I'm glad we took a few days to do this episode instead of directly after Game 6, because I think our opinions may have been a little different had we done it right then and there. So I'm glad we got to digest this. And I'm with David on this. I think the fact that the Dodgers won last year in 2020 really helps put things into perspective in 2021. The one thing that I wanted to talk about and that I wanted to hammer home and that I'll probably reiterate throughout this episode is the fact that we've never seen a bullpen like what the Dodgers had. This was by far the best bullpen I've ever seen as a Dodgers fan. And I know that not only by looking at the numbers, but just the amount of comfort that I felt when we brought in guys like Treinen, brought in guys like Kelly, Knebel, and Jansen this year, obviously, and Vesia, like just the confidence that you have at home, knowing that they're going to get the job done, which is why it was so frustrating to see Dave Roberts overuse his already depleted starting rotation, not only in the DS, but the LCS as well. It just didn't make very much sense to me. We can get into the nitty gritty of all of it in just a moment, but that's what frustrated me the most, that we didn't ride and die with our strength, which was the bullpen, because like David mentioned, they just didn't hit. And they won 2 of these games, one of them by a freaking miracle. But the game that they won, they basically did what they should have done in every single one of these games, which is manufacture runs, get guys on base, get the big hit when they need to. And they just didn't do that consistently. And they didn't do that consistently throughout the season, which is kind of remarkable when you consider the fact that they did win 106 games with this sort of sporadic offense. But the reason they were able to win all these games was because of the pitching staff and mainly the bullpen.
100%. Could not agree more.
Yeah, I mean, in years past, you're kind of able to pinpoint heartbreaking moments, and you look back at that and you're like, okay, that's what cost the Dodgers this series. But as you guys said, they really just did not execute the entire series offensively, other than Game 5 when they really laid it all out there. But other than that,
we'll get into it. I mean, that's kind of how it was for the whole year. I mean, we saw that in the regular season. They would do nothing for 2 games in a row, and then they'd score 20 runs. And then all these fans and all these people, these people online would talk about, oh, the Dodgers run differential. That is why I hate the stat of run differential right there. They score 12 in a game and they look like shit the rest of the series at the plate. I mean, look at these numbers. You got Seager 4 for 24, 167 average. Mookie Betts 4 for 23 in the series. Will Smith 5 for 23 in the series. You can't win like that. You just can't win when those three guys, arguably your three best hitters, did nothing for pretty much the whole series.
Yeah, but I mean, even with those stats, and Trey Turner is another one who hit like
Yeah.
240. None of those guys hit that poorly in the regular season. Like, you can look at all the stretches. None of them ever really struggled that badly. Justin Turner and Chris Taylor certainly had their fair shares, but Chris Taylor was electric in the NLCS. There were not really any stretches where Mookie Betts and Corey Seager were that bad for 2 consecutive series. I'm saying 2 because they basically played 6 games.
Yeah. I mean, but it's crazy though. You take out Chris Taylor and Cody Bellinger and you're gone in the wild card game, or you're gone before the NLDS. I mean, those two guys are the reason they even got this far.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that really hurt this Dodgers team, we haven't really talked about it in this episode, was the injuries just became insurmountable.
Yeah.
It felt like when Max Scherzer got scratched the night before his start, that was a big blow to the gut, because we were really heavily relying on this guy to give us at least 5, maybe 6 great innings out there. After what Jake was saying, the rotation was essentially out of gas. Scherzer was on 5 days rest. We all expected that was more than enough time for him to give it his all, and especially in an elimination game. And to find out that he can't pitch because of arm fatigue, I mean, I can understand him not wanting to go out there if he doesn't feel like he has it. But at the same time, it really set up Walker Buehler in a really bad spot. And that's something else, of course, we got to talk about. Buehler going on 3 days rest. And by the time he got to the 4th inning, there was nothing left in the tank. And that's when the wheels started to fall off for the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yeah. And also, we saw what was happening with Max Scherzer before our eyes down the stretch. He wasn't sharp. He just wasn't sharp. And the fact that the Dodgers brass saw that and didn't show any concern for him is just ignorant on their part, because if you knew that, you got to preserve these guys, especially with Urias and Buehler, who have thrown more innings than they ever have in their entire careers because of injuries to the rotation. Bauer's an asshole. I mean, all of those, reasons combined, they were overworked. And so, yeah, I get it. You got to beat the Giants and you got to get to the next round. And so they felt that Max Scherzer in the 9th inning gave them the best chance to do that. It worked, but it also hurt him for the next round. And in a situation where, again, you didn't need him. You really didn't. And we'll talk about game 2 as well in the NLCS. You didn't need Julio Urias to face that part of the order. You have Treinen, you have Jansen, you have an off day the next day. Why it's almost like we were operating from a position of weakness or a position of desperation in a way where it was like we needed to pull our starters out of the bullpen in order to accomplish this. Bullshit. The Dodgers did this in 2019 with Clayton Kershaw and the NLDS. They had a good bullpen. They had a guy in Adam Kolarek who could get Juan Soto out. Juan Soto couldn't touch him. He was good against lefties, and they just didn't use him. For what? That's the problem that I have with the way that this team runs its organization in the playoffs. Whether you want to put the blame at Andrew Friedman's feet or whether you want to put the blame at Dave Roberts' feet, everybody is culpable in this. But what I don't understand is why, when you have something of strength, why aren't you leaning on that every single time? It makes no sense.
I don't know if we want to talk about game 2 right now, but I'm just going to go ahead and just say this real quick. I'm in the very small minority who doesn't think Dave Roberts did anything wrong that game. Yes, the bullpen is arguably the best bullpen we've ever seen in our lives, as a Dodgers bullpen we've ever seen in our lives. You got guys you can use. Yes, all of that is true. But hear me out. If Julio Urias simply executes, this conversation is completely different. Dave Roberts is getting praised by the national media, praised by Dodgers fans, praised by everybody. And this is not on Dave Roberts. It's just not. Period. Would I have used Julio Urias in that situation? No, I wouldn't have. Can I fault Dave Roberts for doing it? When last year, Julio Urias is maybe the absolute number one reason the team won the World Series.
Right. But let me just step in here, David. He was that number one guy because he was fresh. They only played 60 games,
Look, I hear you.
He pitched. The point is that game 2 was not a must win in the sense of you're going to get knocked out. It's not an elimination game, even though you lost the night before in a walk-off. You want to secure the victory in game 2 so that you can have the split and go back to LA. I get all of that. But when you don't have that many starters and you're trotting Julio Urias out there to pitch in relief, knowing full well he has to start a couple days later, doesn't make very much sense. Now, I'll just say flat out, I actually was in favor of the move when it was happening because I was thinking like, oh, it makes sense. Lefty versus lefty. Got the top of the order. They've got Rosario and Freeman. And if he can just get through this, then they can bring in Jansen or Treinen for the 9th and close it out. But looking back on it, considering everything we've already discussed, it just didn't make very much sense. Now, do I think that move was what cost the Dodgers the series? No, because they could have won that game and blown that game open at any other time.
Yeah, look, my issue is not using Julio Urias. It's you can't have Justin Brule on the roster if you don't trust him.
Well, he brought in a choice.
Yeah, of course they had a choice. Scherzer pitched 4 1/3 that game, and then Roberts brought in Vesia, using his primary lefty in the 5th inning to try to keep it a game, which it worked. But if you are going to carry Justin Brule on the roster, you have to be comfortable to put him in a tough spot. Otherwise, what is the point of having him on the roster? Using Treinen for that 7th inning was stupid. He faced the bottom of the order. That was dumb. I take issue with that, yes. But if Dave Roberts is in the dugout and he makes a decision that he wants Julio Urias over Justin Brule in that inning, then I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Period. It didn't work out, but that's not why they lost the game.
But I'm saying, besides Brule, what other lefty did they have to go to on the roster? They don't want to go to David Price. Victor Gonzalez was a disaster.
No, I agree. I like Justin Brule, but you can't have him on the roster if Dave Roberts isn't going to use him.
I'm just trying to say, like, they didn't really have another option. Like, you have to have 26 people on the roster, and Brule is essentially a throw-in. I think in hindsight, he proved himself that he was actually more of a vital reliever, but I don't think at that moment in time, Roberts had enough faith in him to go to him in that spot.
That's my point. That's my point.
I agree. But wouldn't you rather take your chances with Treinen or Jansen? I mean, we know that Roberts likes Jansen against lefties. He said it a million times. And guess what? Jansen's really good against lefties. That cutter, that off-speed pitch, the curveball he throws works against lefties. It really does. So to me, that was my whole problem. It's like, even though the offense could have blown the doors off the game, and I think that's where the Dodgers lost it because they could not they just couldn't get to the Braves pitching staff, but they were up 4-2 in the 8th. How many times have the Dodgers been up by 2 runs in the 8th inning and just have shut the door down in the regular season? Yeah, more times than you can even remember.
Because in normal situations, you use Treinen for the 8th and Jansen for the 9th, which are your 2 best relievers. They've got the job done 95% of the time. And he just used Treinen in the 7th. That was the fatal error, not bringing in Julio
for the bottom
Urias.
Of the order too.
Yeah, he could. I mean, Phil Bickford didn't pitch that game. Gratterall was available at that time. Both have proven themselves more than capable relievers. That's where he went wrong. Period.
The other difference that I wanted to also address between this year and last year is that in 2020, Urias started game 3 and they brought him out of the bullpen in game 7. Yeah. In this scenario, they brought him out of the bullpen in game 2 after he had just pitched in game 5 of the NLDS with the intent that they were going to start him on game 4. So I just don't think the alignment of how they used him really made sense, given that we already talked about. He pitched the most innings of his life. He was already pretty tired in the previous round. So I think I just think
it was such a missed opportunity to recognize what your strength is as a team. I mean, that right there is just what made me the most mad about losing this series is that we didn't lose it with our best bullets on the mound. We screwed around, got cute, didn't use the guys that we know can get the job done, have proven it time and time again. That bullpen is I've never seen a bullpen on any other team that has been this good.
And it's crazy because you look at teams in the Dodger teams in the past, and the bullpen has always been the weakness, the absolute weakness. And then the 1 year where it's pretty much the strength in the playoffs after all these starters went down or got injured or retired, and Dave Roberts elected to not lean on it. And it's a shame, but I will die on this hill. I want to get into his biggest mistake a little bit later in this episode, but we can move on here.
I'm trying to get to game 6 now. There's three reasons that they lost this game. The one obvious is that they just didn't execute with runners in scoring position. And there's one big inning that we're going to get to in a moment. But the first reason that they lost came in the 4th inning, as I alluded to, when Walker Buehler was set up to face Eddie Rosario for a 3rd time in the game. He had walked Travis d'Arnaud. I heard some people say that's why they lost the inning. That's not why they lost this game. They had an opportunity to get they had an opportunity to get the pinch hitter out, Adrianza, who was 0 for 7 or something in that series or playoffs, I guess. Walker Buehler didn't get him out. Now we have 2nd and 3rd. They had Alex Vesia warming up in the bullpen, and Dave Roberts decides to leave Walker Buehler in this game. And the end result after a 7 or 8 pitch battle is the 3-run home run. There's 2 issues with that. One being, as I said, Buehler facing Rosario for a 3rd time after he had already been hitting him hard in that game. And then the other issue with that was the sequence was just horrible.
Yeah, that's the issue right there.
Yeah, the other issue that I have is the fact that Vesia was warming up and was not brought in. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for to use him? That is the sole purpose that he is up to face either Rosario or Freeman. If you elect to walk Rosario to get to Freeman, which, you could debate that as well. But the fact that he wasn't used more often is the case that Roberts doesn't have anybody warming up. And it's just his starter out there, whether it's Buehler, Kershaw, doesn't matter. They die out there because he doesn't have anybody else behind him to come in. But he did, and still decided to have Buehler face Rosario, who nobody, literally could not get the guy out to save our lives. You have Buehler on short rest. This is the moment right here. This is the moment where you micromanage the shit. This is your elimination game again. This is the moment where you say, you know what? I need to make this move because we got to stop the bleeding right here. And that 3-run homer pretty much sealed the deal.
Okay, so I'm going to die on this hill as well. I was fine leaving Buehler in that game. I was fine leaving Buehler in to face Rosario. The issue was that was the worst fucking pitching sequence I have ever seen on a baseball diamond. Ever in the history of baseball. Maybe I'm exaggerating a bit, but that's what it feels like right now. Okay, he threw 7 pitches in that bat. In that at bat, 5 of them were cutters inside or middle. 2 of them were sinkers way off the plate that weren't even close. Did I go into a coma, or is Walker Buehler not a 2-pitch pitcher? Does he not throw a curveball, a changeup, a slider? And you're just going to pound the inside of the zone to the hottest hitter on the planet with 5 cutters? What do you think was going to happen? Whether it's Buehler, whether it's Smith, whether it's coming from the dugout, the absolute worst sequence of the game. That is why the Dodgers season ended that day. I still can't believe it. It was mind-boggling how they just continued to set up inside, cutter inside, cutter inside, cutter inside. Yes. And then I can see it on Kevin's face. He's going to say, Buehler has lost control of his secondary pitches, lost control, lost command. Don't care. Throw it in the dirt, throw it outside, throw his timing off, mix it up. You had a pitch to play with. The count. You
also had a base to play with too.
You also had a base to play with. You could take your chances with Freeman. Then Roberts could bring in Vesia. The worst sequence I've ever seen in the last however long my memory goes.
Yeah, it's almost like they were scared to throw those secondary pitches in case there was a wild pitch because they had the runner on third. Obviously, was not the right decision in hindsight. This just goes back to my point. If you don't have faith in your secondary pitches, you shouldn't be on the mound. So I don't know what the hell just went on. Roberts had like a brain fart or something. One, obviously being, you got to go the lefty. 2, for being such an analytic driven heavy team, you don't see them often leave their starters to face these guys for a third time through. It's hypocritical to me how they have such a focus on a game plan, but then when it boils down to these key moments, they pivot from it and then they lead to disaster.
Yeah, Roberts is so hell bent on having guys have their moments like that. When he manages like that, we typically lose. It doesn't typically work out for us when he decides that, what he wanted was Buehler to strike out Rosario and have this momentous moment for Buehler. He walks off the mound. That's it. Attaboy, pat on the back. Like that's what Roberts wanted, because Buehler has been the horse. This is the second time he's taken the ball on short rest. He's been the dog. He's been the bulldog. He's been the guy that they can rely on when Max Scherzer just couldn't do it. And so that's what happens. I mean, he's done it with Jansen, with Kershaw. I mean, just guys that he knows full well he should be going the strategic route. And like Kevin said, so analytically driven that he has the goddamn lefty up to face the lefty and doesn't use him.
You know what, though? That's season on the line. Who do you want determining our season? Do you want Walker Buehler or do you want anyone else?
This isn't Walker Buehler on full rest, though.
It doesn't matter, man. Nobody's got a bigger pair of nuts than Walker Buehler. If I want my season to be determined, I want that dude throwing the ball.
He just wasn't.
I want
the
a
same
better
pitcher
sequence.
This year.
I want a better sequence. What do you mean? He's going to finish top 5 in the Cy Young. Yes, he was tired. That doesn't mean he can't rear back and get one more hitter. The sequence was pathetic. I mean, what the hell are we doing with that sequence? What are we doing? What are we doing?
Don't pitch to Rosario. I don't care. I don't care. That guy was beating us the entire series. That's the one guy you can't let beat you in that lineup. It used to be Friedman. It used to be Riley, but Rosario was the guy. You needed to get him out.
Yeah, and instead you just throw 5 cutters inside. You might as well just tell him what pitch is coming. Here's a menu. Here's what I'm going to throw right now. That's what we did that at bat.
Walker Buehler with the blister last season was better than the Walker Buehler we got in this postseason. And I think part of it is just that they're different guys because of the length of the season. But the velocity on everything Buehler threw was not as hard as it was last season. And the advanced stats will back it up that he was not the same guy he's been the last 2 seasons.
I mean, you think about it, and it's like the Dodgers had the injuries to the rotation. They needed their starters to go every 5th day. There was no rest for any of these guys, especially given the fact that the last couple months of the season, they needed to be in there because the race for the NLCS was so closer than we've seen it in recent past, where, if the Dodgers were able to cruise to the end of the season or not worry about the division, then maybe their guys would have been better rested or, would perform better like this, but they just were gassed.
Thanks a lot, Cole Hamels.
Yeah, and Danny Duffy.
Yeah, I mean, Friedman tried, man. He tried to bring in the reinforcements. You got to give him that.
Yeah, it's not on Friedman for sure. Let's get to the 7th inning, because this is where the next part of this game went wrong. Luke Jackson became like Byung-Hun Kim in this series. Every time they threw him out there, he blew up. AJ Pollock came through with a massive 2-run double, whatever it was. Regardless, the Dodgers set themselves up for second.
It was a 1 RBI double.
Yeah, 1 RBI.
Okay.
2nd and 3rd is the scene, though.
Yeah. Dodgers set themselves up for 2nd and 3rd. Nobody out. Snitker makes the bold move of going to the lefty, despite knowing that the Dodgers are going to go to their righty bats in Tyler Matzek.
Guess what? Snitker went to his best reliever.
Yep.
In the bullpen, because he was like, I'm going to die with my best reliever on the mound. Just wanted to say that.
Well, that's what the Dodgers did with Walker Buehler. Just saying.
Yeah. So regardless,
who wants to
talk about where this went wrong? Because obviously the pinch hitting selection was stupid.
I mean, Jake, I'm happy to start because I'm going to get angry. So if you want to start, I can calm down real quick.
I'll start. I don't think any of those 3 hitters came up there and got a piece of any of those pitches. I don't think anybody got a foul ball.
Nope.
Albert Pujols looked way overmatched. I know you're going to get into this, but the fact that Steven Souza Jr. was up at the plate with the season on the line is
batting 152 on the year.
Questionable, at least. I mean, at least put up Austin Barnes if you're going to put up someone that actually has some postseason experience. But taking Souza out of the equation, you think with the season on the line, you've got Albert Pujols who's come through many, many times. He had nobody out. All he had to do was hit a fly ball to just get one run in, right? And then you're only down by one. And also Mookie Betts, who stared at two balls right down the middle.
Yeah.
What are you looking for?
That was the worst I've ever seen him look.
Those are awful at bats, the worst at bats. And give credit to Tyler Matzik, right? He just owned them. I mean, just straight up came in and just shut them the hell down.
All right. Roberts sending up Steven Souza Jr. with the literal season on the line was his worst move since bringing in Clayton Kershaw in 2019. You cannot, under any circumstance, put Souza in that situation. You just can't do it. I do not give a fuck that he is right-handed and the matchups say go to the righty against Tyler Matzik. That's a load of crap. You can't have Gavin Lux, the number 2 prospect in all of baseball, talented as most people on the team, against any handed pitcher. I don't care what the stats say. Yes, he's worse versus left-handed pitchers. I don't care. He is the best possible pinch hitter you can send up there with the season on the line, period, end of story. Barnes also has a case here. But look, if the season's on the line, you have to send up your best player. I don't care what hand the pitcher throws the baseball with. I don't care. Throw the analytics out the book, throw the matchups out the window, throw it all out the window. You needed to send Lux up there. Is Gavin Lux incapable of getting a hit off a left-handed pitcher? No, absolutely not. We've seen it time and time again this year. I think he has 16 hits off lefties this season. Inexcusable to send Steven Souza up there. That was the season right there. That was his worst move of the series, his worst move of the playoffs, his worst move of the season, his worst move since 2019. The Dodgers died with Steven Souza in control of the destiny. That's just abhorrent. I mean, how do you let that happen? You can't.
And you didn't even need a hit in that situation. Just a fly ball. Just put the ball in play.
Anything. And it's not Steven Souza's fault either. I don't blame him whatsoever. He should have been watching from the dugout, cheering on the Dodgers, which is what he did best this season.
And also, you put the lefty up too. Even if Lux were to hit a ground ball to the right side, that scores.
There's one. He is by far the most capable hitter off the bench in that situation. Hands down. Don't care if the guy's throwing left-handed, right-handed, submarine, both hands, ambidextrous. Don't care. Gavin Lux was the move there, and now it's all over because we put the faith of our season in Steven Souza's hands.
And also just the fact that Andy Burns and Steven Souza Jr. had more pinch hit opportunities than Gavin Lux and Austin Barnes. I don't get it.
Burns and Souza combined for an inning of outs that game. 1 inning. We gave them 3 outs with Andy Burns and Steven Souza. 3 outs.
It was certainly a slap in the face, riding out this great season, 106 wins, another 6 in the postseason, only to have Steven Souza come up with essentially your season on the line. It certainly stung. It was pretty stupid, and I don't know why. I don't know how a competent manager.
It's always weird when Roberts deviates from the matchups script. Like, at what point does he decide? It almost feels like he goes off script when he shouldn't go off script, and he stays on script when he really should go off script. Like with Bueller, leaving Bueller out there.
Yeah. Like,
really should have gone to the script because he had Vesia up, or really should have gone, with the script of not bringing in Julio Urias or not bringing in Max Scherzer, but he goes off script to do that. But then when the moment you really need to go off script with a guy at the plate, it doesn't matter that Souza is a right-handed bat or that Burns is a right-handed bat. They're not good hitters, period. So to me, and yes, they are major league hitters and they deserve to play at a high level. But when you've got the season on the line, you've got to go to the best possible bats off the bench. And granted, the Dodgers bench we can talk about too, which was just bad overall. But there are the right moves and the correct moves, and they just weren't made in that inning.
Yeah, it was bad for a couple of reasons. One being a lot of guys didn't pan out, but also injuries shortened up the bench essentially, and that's why Roberts felt the need to go to Souza. But regardless, it's just stupid. This isn't spring training where you're trying to like get cute and let guys get their opportunities and get an at bat. This is game 6 of the National League Championship Series, and I'm on board with David. It should have been Gavin Lux or at least Austin Barnes, but instead they go with AAA 152 batting Steven Souza Jr. So he'll probably be in Japan or something next year, but at least he had his moment, I guess. Thank you, Roberts.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not on Souza. It's not. I don't expect him to succeed. When you send him up there, I expect him to walk slowly back to the dugout after the at-bat is over. That is what I expect. You needed to give Gavin Lux a chance. You just needed to do it. By far your most talented hitter on the bench. You had to do it, and he didn't do it. Could have used an emotional Dave Roberts decision at that point in time.
Souza, you could argue, actually gave them a run. Like when he was in, was it game? I forget if it was game 1 or game 2, but that throw from right field that he uncorked.
Yeah.
Made
he gave
37 bounces to the plate.
Yeah.
Well, none of this happens if Muncy doesn't get hurt. Remember that.
The injuries, they were just too much.
But I mean, Atlanta had injuries too. So, I mean, you can,
it's no excuse.
Yeah.
It's just the reality.
So there's a few things I want to just throw out there in the air, the universe. One being, I felt like, got to give credit to the Braves. They beat us, but at the same time, I feel like the Dodgers beat themselves more than the Braves beat us.
Games 1 and 2, I would completely agree.
Game 4, they smacked us around.
Yeah, that's 1. Good for them. So the second thing is, I don't think any team in the history of the sport got fucked over harder by this MLB playoff format than your Los Angeles Dodgers. 106 win team had to go up against St. Louis in a do or die wild card game. That's one of the reasons Max Scherzer began to battle fatigue, because it was unnecessary. Both the Dodgers and the Cardinals had more wins than the Atlanta Braves, who essentially skated by with an easy cupcake division in the NL East that we all thought no team coming out of that division had a chance to go anywhere. Yet here they are in the World Series. And 2, they kind of got a lucky matchup with the Milwaukee Brewers, who, yes, they have some daunting pitchers at the top of the rotation, but that's about it. They have one awesome reliever who's a dumbass and broke his hand, and then they have no offense.
Yeah, and also, like, I mean, it's just about what team gets hot, right?
But I'm not done here, though.
Oh, okay.
The Dodgers then have to go on the road to the San Francisco Giants in what was one of the most grueling series probably in the history of the NLDS format. That went down to the 9th inning of a Game 5 series. If you have the seeds really line up by record, it should have been the Atlanta Braves. If they don't at least have to play in the wild card game, they should be facing those Giants in the NLDS, because again, 107 wins versus 88. The Dodgers honestly should have had the Milwaukee Brewers. But the point is that the Giants essentially beat us down. They fought too hard, and then we were just out of gas, and we were out of a lot of players by the time we got to the Braves, who were way more rested than we were.
Still should have won. I mean, still had the better team, still should have figured out a way to win. And I'll always die on that hill. I mean, I think that the Dodgers had that series, had they been laser focused in games 1 and 2, would not be in the situation, at the very least, game 2 would not have been in the situation that they were in. Yes, Atlanta played well. And it is kind of all about who gets hot in the postseason. I mean, you look at 2020, where the Astros make the playoffs with an under 500 record and make it to the ALCS, almost make it to the World Series, but were stopped by a better Rays team. That's just what happens in the playoffs. And I agree. If there was one team that shouldn't have been made to play extra games, it was the Los Angeles Dodgers. Also, if there was one team that couldn't afford to play extra games, it was the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yeah. So you go back to, I don't know, let's say August, maybe even before that, where we knew that it was going to be the Dodgers against the Giants in the wild card game. I always had a feeling that I thought it was going to be the Brewers, but I always had this thought in the back of my mind that the Brewers, or it turns out the Braves, were going to have a cakewalk pretty much to get to the NLCS. And they're not going to have to play an emotional series. They're not going to have to play an emotional wild card game. They're not going to have a huge emotional high and expending a ton of energy because those are hard to build off of. I mean, the Dodgers had to play an extremely emotional, high intensity wild card game, followed by pretty much the series of the year against the Giants that went 5 games, came down to the last inning, etc. So I always had this thought, I took the Brewers to win the World Series 3 months ago because I figured that this could happen. And it ended up being the Braves. And I think that the Dodgers, whether it would have been the Dodgers or the Giants, playing in that kind of an emotional series against a fellow 100-win team takes a toll on you. And obviously the injuries play a factor too, but those series can take a giant toll on you. It's pretty simple.
Yeah,
I think it's more the injuries than the emotions, to be honest.
It's obviously the injuries, first and foremost, but I mean, that's not easy to keep playing those emotional series after emotional series and get high, or avoid the lows, etc. That's tough, man.
The one part of the team that was fresh was the bullpen, and I'll keep saying this again. That is what makes me so crazy about losing the NLCS, was that we just didn't rely on them. We didn't lean on them when we definitely should have. And it was the one aspect of that team that wasn't gassed.
Yeah, I mean, before first pitch, Game 6, Lauren Shihadi said she interviewed basically the entire bullpen, and they all said they were ready and good to go. So kind of proves your point.
Yeah. And that one bullpen game was freaking excellent.
Yep.
Excellent.
8 1/3 of no runs. 3 hits total.
You take out the Joe Kelly 2-run homer that he gave up to Freeman, and he gets hurt. After that, it was like, holy cow, this team. I mean, this bullpen is unstoppable.
All right, so I think I covered everything I wanted to talk about in this stupid series. Is there anything else we forgot about, or you guys wanted to get off your chest before we move on?
Well, I really appreciate the work that AJ Pollock, Chris Taylor, and Cody Bellinger did towards the second half of this series. Mainly talking about Pollock, but Bellinger and Taylor for the entirety of the series. They were the backbone of this very sporadic and at times very weak offense. And for the top of the lineup to do what they did, we already talked about it at the top of this podcast, to not come through when the Dodgers needed them most. It was Taylor and Pollock. And in that Game 5, one of the elimination games they played in the LCS, that it was remarkable. The fact that CT3 hit 3 home runs in a game, AJ Pollock hit 2 home runs in that game. I just can't say enough about what CT3 meant to this team in the postseason, but also Pollock, because we've talked about it a lot. And since the Dodgers have had Pollock since 2019, Pollock has just not shown up in the postseason. He was over 13 in 2019, famously, and then couldn't come through in 2020. So for those guys to come through like they did, it was awesome to see.
Yeah, I agree. And, this is going to sound, it's not going to sound weird, but I just want to take my hat off to Walker Buehler and Julio Urias, because they didn't really get a fair shake in the playoffs. I mean, they had to shoulder an unreasonably high amount of responsibility for the Dodgers' success. And what they did over the entire season is worthy of praise. They took the next steps in their careers, and especially Julio Urias, because you got some idiots on Dodgers Twitter who are trying to say, oh, Julio Urias should be in the bullpen. No, that's wrong. And you're an idiot if you think that. A big, stupid idiot. And Julio Urias basically told those guys to shut the hell up. And Walker Buehler, yes, the velocity was down. Yes, he didn't have amazing season, although he's going to finish in the top 5 Cy Young, which is insane to say together. My hat's off to them. It's unfortunate that the season had to end the way it did. I didn't really most Dodgers playoff series, I got my nostrils flaring and they're, all that kind of stuff. I didn't really feel that with this series. It was kind of just they either won the game or they didn't. It was a very calm series for me in my nostrils, which are normally flared up.
It's also kind of just hard to hate the Braves. They don't really have any players that are unlikable.
I agree.
They just do their business, and I kind of like teams like that. They don't really taunt or showboat. They just get up and play and do their business.
And they also came through with runners in scoring position. The Braves hit well over 300 in that series as runners in scoring position. Meanwhile, the Dodgers collectively hit about 244. So that was not the difference, but it was one of the big differences that the Braves just came through. They also had less opportunities to do that. I believe the Dodgers had about 45 at bats with runners in scoring position, and the Braves had about 35. And so they were able to come through, or I shouldn't say, I may be speaking out of turn off the top of my head, but the point is that the Braves had less opportunities to score runs, and they did it at a higher clip than the Dodgers did. And you can't fault them for that. And also the series that Eddie Rosario had, one of the best postseason series I've ever seen from a Dodger or otherwise. He simply owned the entire series.
Absolutely. And if you're wondering why we're not going to recap all the players, regular seasons and all that and go more in depth, we have that coming in the off season. So look ahead or stay tuned for the weeks ahead, because we got a lot of stuff lined up. We're going to break down pretty much every player and kind of give you brief analysis on our grades on how they performed during the regular and postseason. My final thought on this series is just, if there's one thing that really was my takeaway positive, is that Cody Bellinger looked like he bounced back.
Hell yeah.
And looks like he's going to be due for a big 2022. It sucks because he's going to have a 4 or 5 month layoff now, and things could change. But at least in that NLCS, he looked like a combination of the 2018 and 2019 Cody Bellinger.
But at least he has that layoff to get fully healthy. That was one thing that was really ailing him this season, and not only the time that he missed, but even the time that he was there. You could just tell that those injuries that he sustained were really affecting him.
Yes. So on Wednesday afternoon, Andrew Friedman, the Dodgers president of operations, addressed the media in his annual
press conference.
Going out of the season press conference like he does every year. And, they asked him a number of questions. They asked him what happened to the offense. He basically summed it up saying, on paper, he thought this was the best lineup he had ever assembled, and was kind of surprised and took a step back how they didn't perform. 1 through 9, he felt like the Trey Turner move put them over the top, and thought they'd be able to balance themselves out when certain guys struggled and other guys were hot. Obviously wasn't the case. It seemed like the team, other than 2 guys, went collectively cold. He also was asked about Trevor Bauer, a couple things. One being, will Trevor Bauer ever pitch again in Dodger blue? He declined to comment. He also asked how Trevor Bauer would affect their offseason. He also said you have to wait and see. So what that means for free agency now is that, unfortunately, it seems like this contract is going to either come back to haunt the Dodgers, or we're going to catch a break and they're going to suspend him. But the point is, he will have an impact on how the Dodgers roll out their team in terms of payroll next season.
Yeah. Well, it also seemed like Friedman was deferring to Major League Baseball. A lot.
It's the only option.
And it is his only option. And, Major League Baseball has yet to kind of hand down whatever punishment they are going to hand down to Bauer. And we just going to have to wait and see on that. And, basically Friedman, the organization, their hands are tied in this situation.
Yeah, which we've discussed many times on this podcast, but some people still refuse to accept.
He was also asked about the amount of injuries, and he said he knows every team has to deal with them, but even he was surprised by the amount of injuries that this Dodgers team had to deal with. And he was asked about why Julio Urias came out of the bullpen in Game 2 of the NLCS. And he basically politely said, you'll have to ask about Dave Roberts in that decision. He basically explained that they do all the talking before the game, but once the game actually gets started, it comes down to Dave Roberts and his coaching staff to make those in-game decisions. So if you're still one of those people out there who gets mad at Friedman saying, oh, they don't know what they're doing out there, why do they go to the analytics? Well, according to Friedman, those decisions in the game boil down to Dave Roberts and his coaching staff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's simple. I mean, we had Tim Neverett on the podcast, last off season, I believe, and he basically what he said is, they have the plan, they have what ideally should go on, and then the game happens, and obviously nothing can go perfectly according to plan, and that's when Dave Roberts makes his money. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That's just the manager's life.
And then just to conclude pretty much the press conference, he wouldn't really reveal his strategy going into this offseason in terms of which guys they're going to for sure resign. He gave the safe answer saying, oh, we'd love to have all of them back, but he understands that it's their decision to test the free agency market, and he respects that. And he also mentioned that rounding out the rotation is something that they're going to address. Don't exactly know what that means, because he also said he feels like they have a number of guys in the system, some already that we saw, Mitch White, Andre Jackson, but a couple minor leaguers in Bobby Miller, Landon Knack, and Pepio that we could be seeing next season somewhere down the line.
Hop on the Mitch White train. Hop on. I am the conductor, and the train is leaving the station in March. So buy your tickets before then.
I'm not as high on Mitch White as you are, but I will say that I've always liked him. And I've seen the potential.
Buy stock now.
We have a number of questions from the fans, and they all want us to talk about the offseason. So we're not going to go too crazy in depth, but we are going to answer these questions to the best of our ability.
Yeah, we got to have a whole offseason episode soon. Yeah.
So here we go. The first question comes from Gabe Valencia. Who do you think the Dodgers will bring back? And I'll list out some of the free agents. There's Max Scherzer, there's Clayton Kershaw, there's Corey Seager, there's Chris Taylor, there's Kenley Jansen, Corey Knebel, and then Joe Kelly has a team option,
which will be declined. So add Joe Kelly to that list. Go ahead, Jake.
And we'll do these kind of quick. So
yeah, I've been struggling with this one for a while, but I'd like to bring Seager back, and I'd like to bring Taylor back.
Not happening. Pick one or the other. You're not
getting
getting both. You're not getting both, my friend.
What if they get rid of Bauer?
Still not happening. You need pitchers too.
All right, give me Seager.
Okay.
Give me Seager. Give me Kershaw. I'm gonna wave goodbye to Max Scherzer. Kenley Jansen. Thank you so much. That's a tough one because he was really good this year. But yeah, I'd like to bring back Knebel too.
My predictions, just real quick. They bring back Chris Taylor.
Wait. Not that wasn't the question. What would you do?
No, who do you think?
Oh, who do you think? Oh,
yeah.
Sorry. I misheard then.
Yeah. That's right. Okay.
Fuck me then.
Yeah, pretty much. Bend over backwards. All right. I think Chris Taylor, Corey Knebel, Max Scherzer, and Clayton Kershaw are Dodgers next season.
You think Scherzer's coming back after what happened?
I do. And Jim Bowden put out that he thinks he's getting $50 million annually.
He's not far off.
Who the hell lets Jim Bowden out of the house?
He's not far
he's
off.
Extremely far off. Scherzer, there's no way in hell Scherzer's getting over 35.
I don't
think $50 million. Are you insane?
It's gonna
he
break
may
the
not
Bauer
get that
deal.
much, but I honestly feel like a team like a team like the Angels are gonna go for Scherzer.
You know what? It would be smart of them to finally do that instead of pay losers like Anthony Rendon. But here's what I have to say, just really quick on Scherzer. He's 36 or 37 years old. He doesn't want to go to the Angels or the Rangers or some poverty franchise. He wants to win another World Series. Him and Clayton Kershaw are going to have a nice lunch together. They're going to talk about what they're going to do. They're going to come to Andrew Friedman and be like, here's what you need to do to keep us. Bada bing, bada boom. See you next season.
So you would get rid of Seager? I mean, you would say goodbye to Seager.
I would
right?
like to keep Corey Seager, but I think he's going to get close to $275 million, and that's not what the Dodgers are going to be willing to pay.
All right.
To me, I think you got to hold on to him. What he's done in the postseason, what he did for the 2020 championship, it can't be underrated. And
well,
also,
you can't play him at shortstop long term.
Okay, we can
well,
debate-
hello,
we can debate this
we're
all
getting
later.
we're getting the
Kevin's in no mood.
okay,
debate all
we're
that
getting the
later.
DH.
Thanks for that.
Go ahead,
Spoiling
Captain.
something else, but okay. Max Scherzer will break the Trevor Bauer record, and I do think the Dodgers will pay him. Whether that works out remains to be seen. So Scherzer, Kershaw, they're coming back. Corey Seager comes back. My prediction is that the Rangers, the Yankees, and the Dodgers have 3 teams leading the race. The Rangers are going to offer slightly more money, and Corey Seager is going to be like, oh, hell no, I don't want to play for that sad franchise. Comes back to the Dodgers in a shocking move. And finally, the other guy I think they bring back is Corey Knebel. I think that's actually the first guy they get off the board. I think he's just too big of a high leverage guy to let go, and they'll get him on a good value. Moving on from CPZ, predict what the opening day lineup for 2022 will look like.
Oh my God, man! I mean, what am I, Nostradamus
I
here?
let you guys know in advance. I'll go first
God.
if you
Yeah,
need to
please.
think.
I got a pen or something real quick.
All right, so here we go. Mookie Betts leads off in right field. Corey Seager second and shortstop. In a bit of a surprise move, Nick Castellanos
Oh,
is the designated hitter, hitting third. Cleanup, Max Muncy at first. Bellinger in center, batting fifth. Will Smith, your catcher, at sixth. Justin Turner at third base, seventh. Eighth, AJ Pollock in left. And Gavin Lux batting ninth at second base. You'll notice that someone on the team right now who was a big part isn't there.
You're gonna trade Trey Turner?
I think that the Dodgers pay Seager. Now they realize that Trey Turner is a trade chip. They're going to package him with David Price and some other scrubs and do a massive salary dump to retool this team.
Who do they get for him?
It's going to be a starting pitcher, but I don't want to show all my cards yet. We'll save that for another episode.
all right. Here's my lineup: Mookie Betts leading off, Trey Turner batting second, Cody Bellinger, resurgence, batting third, Max Muncy hitting fourth, Will Smith hitting sixth, Justin Turner hitting seventh, Gavin Lux hitting eighth, and AJ Pollock hitting ninth.
Where's Lux playing?
Or did I do that right? No. I messed up the numbers. So I got Betts, Trey Turner, Bellinger, Muncy, Smith, Turner, Lux, Pollock, Chris Taylor.
And my
Where's
opening day
Lux playing?
starters, Walker
Gavin
Buehler.
Gavin Lux.
Just to mention.
Gavin Lux is playing second base. Trey Turner is at short.
Oh, I see.
AJ Pollock is your DH. Chris Taylor outfield with Betts and Bellinger.
Okay. Shit. All right. Let's go Betts, Seager, Cody Bellinger, Max Muncy, Trey Turner, Will Smith, Gavin Lux, AJ Pollock.
So the same
All right.
team, basically.
With no Chris Taylor.
Well,
No Chris
yeah, I
Taylor,
mean,
but I have Seager.
no outside guys coming in was what I meant to say.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah,
can't. I'm not in a position to predict that yet.
All right. Next question is from Brojan Truin. If Kelly Jansen isn't re-signed, who is the new closer?
Trinan.
Knebel.
Well, I honestly think without Kenley Jansen, because like we said, it was sort of half an honorary role and half his role because he's earned it. But I think the Dodgers are better off doing the matchups and putting in giving the best part of the lineup to Trinan.
I agree. I don't think Blake Trinan is going to be the closer. I think he's going to have the same exact role he's had as a Dodger, which is going to be high leverage, seventh or eighth inning. I think Brusdar Graterol is going to take a big next step, as we saw in the playoffs, and I think he's going to share closing duties with Corey Knebel.
I'm scared for Graterol. I feel like his arm's going to blow out, but I don't want to put
Don't
that
say
bad
that.
juju. So, young Jeremy.
You don't want to say it, but you just did.
Young Jeremy, 18. Is Corey Seager returning, or do they extend Trey Turner? We already kind of answered the Seager part, so we can answer this part. do you think the Dodgers will extend or re-sign Trey Turner? I already said no.
Well, didn't he say that he didn't want to be in LA?
Well, he said he doesn't want to be on the West Coast, but
That's
you
what he
know,
said.
when a $275 to $300 million contract can change that for someone real quick.
Yeah, I don't see the point of giving him that when you could give that to Corey Seager, but that's a whole nother debate, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a whole nother debate. So
also-
Kevin is a yes, Jake is a yes, or a no on this question. I think they are gonna not re-sign Corey Seager, and I think in that situation they will extend Trey Turner.
I think that people that are upset with Trey Turner for how he played in the postseason, I'm not on that train. I'm not on that train to say like you're done on this team. But what he did in the regular season can happen in the postseason. He's too good not to succeed in the postseason, in my opinion.
I agree. I'm not a believer I don't buy stock in someone's postseason stats. I don't put too much stock into if they're really good in the postseason or really bad in the postseason, with one exception, which is Jock Peterson.
Oh, I'm absolutely buying people's stock, how they perform in the postseason. You were saying that about Walker Buehler not too long ago, so just saying.
Well,
You're talking about me?
No, David.
There's a couple players who can take their game to the next level, but I don't believe someone is just perennially bad in the postseason, which is what people thought AJ Pollock was. But fast forward to this year, he was one of the top 3 Dodgers in the postseason. So I think it just comes around and goes around in the playoffs.
Yasmani Grandal would beg to differ. Nick Stelzer wants to know, if Chris Taylor leaves, how do we replace him?
Oh man, that's a tough guy to replace. You know, he plays all over the field. You know, I think they're not going to give up on Zach McKinstry being that guy.
That's what I
think
say.
That's what they're going to try to do.
Well, he looked really good before he got hurt beginning of the season.
Yeah.
We saw the potential there. It's just about him staying healthy and him getting more of an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think McKinstry will take his game to the next level. We saw the raw talent early on before the injury, like you mentioned. Edwin Rios will be back. Hopefully he can bounce back because he was really good in 2020. I think people kind of forget how much pop that guy had. He had some big home runs in the postseason too.
I don't think Friedman can afford to sleep on the bench. I think he's got to fortify that bench. You know, get us someone that is established so that we don't have the AAA revolving door that we had this year.
Absolutely. I don't know who they're gonna get. Those are things we have to wait for later in the offseason once the winter meetings and the hot stove heat up. But they will find a way to replace Chris Taylor unless they re-sign him. I just think that Chris Taylor's value is going to get too big for Andrew Friedman to want to re-sign. And then finally, last question comes from Ryan at Catch the Blues, one of our top listeners.
Yeah, he's a good dude. I like that guy.
Discuss.
Hey, Ryan. Sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
Discuss what could be a questionable rotation next season. Who eats quality innings? We kind of already touched on it. Obviously, Buehler, Urias, 2 guys for sure back. One of Kershaw and Scherzer will return, if not both, although they're going to have to find a way to load management those dudes because they fell apart later on in the season. And then, you know, Dustin May won't probably pitch as a starter next season.
He won't. No shot.
Tony Gonsolin is a big question mark. Can he bounce back? Do they move on? Mitch White, Andre Jackson, Friedman already talked about. Those are 2 guys he thinks will have a role. And I think that Friedman is going to address this rotation in a trade. Can't talk about that right now, but I do have things coming for later on this offseason. And I think that they are going to make a lucrative trade for a starting pitcher.
I feel sort of bad for Tony Gonsolin in a lot of ways, just because in 2020, he didn't really get that consistency in the rotation, but when he wasn't there, he was really effective. And then in this season, he was hurt pretty much the entire year. And then when he did get his chances, he wasn't very effective. So I know that he's a good pitcher. I know that there's something in there within him that he can be effective. So I'm not ready to give up on him yet. And I think from what we saw this year, you can really never have enough pitching, because literally we thought we had too much. We had a surplus of pitchers and they all died.
That was the joke.
Yep.
That was literally the joke coming in, like, there's just too much pitching. How are we going to fit all these guys?
Yeah. I agree with Kevin here. I think they're going to possibly make a trade for someone, but I think Friedman saw what happened, and despite his valiant effort to acquire pitching help like Danny Duffy and Cole Hamels and all these guys, I think he's going to go on a bender. I think he's going to dip into AJ Preller's secret stash of friendly powder here and sign about 6 to 7 guys who can just eat innings, who aren't very good, but can just be there to eat innings. I'm talking like if they could like put Eric Lauer in a lab and clone him and get like 6 of him, they would do that. And I think Andrew Friedman is going to sign that kind of guy. Drew Smiley, that type of guy. Maybe they'll kick the tires on Dylan Bundy, who was a noted spider tack merchant, but big fan of Dylan Bundy still. I think you're going to see those guys get signed by the Dodgers.
And then they'll all get hurt.
Well, can't be worse than this year, I hope.
Yeah, hopefully not. And that's why the Dodgers were willing to pay that asshole, Trevor Bauer, a record contract, because he was supposed to be that cornerstone, eating all the innings, absorbing it, taking a toll on his body, laughing himself to the bank, so that the younger guys like Urias and May and Gonsolin
and Buehler we'll add him in there too.
Yeah. Can have less of a load on their plate so that they would be more fresh in the postseason. And unfortunately, it was a series of unfortunate events and they just ran out of gas. But I don't want to hear anyone say that this Dodgers team didn't have enough heart or they didn't want it enough, because they absolutely did want it. This team wanted to repeat. You could tell just by how much determination they had, especially in the second half. They were basically the best team in baseball. It's just unfortunate that the Giants wouldn't quit either. And then I already talked about, they just had too much competition in that NLDS, and that's what really was the last straw and took a toll on them.
Yeah, I mean, that guy who said that is an idiot, but that's well documented.
All right, guys. Is there anything else you wanted to cover before we close this show out?
I don't know. I mean, it's a sad way to end the season, but what are you going to do, man? They won the World Series in 2020. This team had heart. They cared. Like I said last episode, I wish we could keep this exact roster together for the next 5 years and run it back and run it back and run it back.
Pujols will be dead by then, but
yeah. Kevin's laughing because he's just disgusted with the Dodgers bench, but you know what I'm saying. I'm excited for the offseason. They need to get the CBA hammered out. I don't want this lockout nonsense. Rob Manfred and Tony Clark need to be locked in a room together for the next month and then just figure it out. But I'm excited for what Andrew Friedman's going to do. I think he's going to have a reckoning of some kind this offseason.
This is definitely the most holes that I feel like Andrew Friedman has had to fill on a Dodgers roster, just because of everybody that's come off the books. We're losing all the guys that we once had a ton of control over. And so this is going to be an interesting offseason. The team is going to look a lot different, I feel, next season. And the final thing that I wanted to say, and it's something that I have reiterated a bunch, is the fact that this was not Dave Roberts' fault, all of this. And I know a lot of people are blaming him. Fire Dave Roberts was something that was trending on Twitter directly after the game. And it's just unfortunate when you're willing to put all of the blame at the feet of one person who doesn't play the game, who's not in the game. And it's unfortunate when you consider the fact that even still with all of the adversity, yes, the Dodgers did face a lot of adversity this year. I don't care what anybody says. That he was able to keep this team together, that he was able to manage his way through the season, did a pretty damn good job of managing this team on and off the field throughout the season. And he, has a World Series under his belt. They've been to 3 World Series. They're in it every single year. And so you've got to give credit to the job that he's done. And in no way do I feel that the Dodgers should fire Dave Roberts. And in no way do I feel that the decisions he made in the postseason, albeit questionable and albeit can be considered dumb and bad, I don't think that that's why they lost this series. It simply isn't. I mean, this team offensively just didn't meet the moment. And that's what it comes down to. The offense didn't meet the moment and the starting pitching was too gassed.
I'm with you 100%. And I also think that this team is going to make a few notable moves, and it won't be the same Dodgers team that we watched in 2021. But that's what the offseason's all about, baby. So can't wait for the winter meetings. Hopefully there's no lockout because that would suck. But yes, stay tuned with us. We got all kinds of fun stuff coming up. We're going to get some guests on. But by helping us out, you just have to subscribe, give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast or wherever they let you do ratings. And, thank you guys so much for hanging with us this 2021 season.